Hey guys, welcome to my new movie collections update video, my second for this month. As you may recall, my last video was about 2 weeks ago, I believe. Right? So again, I don't have like a huge collection to show you this time around, so another small amount. But I think I'm gonna do it this way just so that I can keep coming up with new videos more frequently. All right. For this particular video, I don't have a lot of really new releases, in terms of movies that just came out. A lot of the films that I have here this time around are movies that have been out for a while, but I just finally got around to actually picking them up and adding them for my own collection. So let's get started, alright? So the first film that I have to show you comes from Magnolia, and it is Deadfall with Eric Bana and Olivia Wilde. Now, Bana and Wilde play the sibling characters who are on the run after pretty much performing a casino heist, and I believe they're on their way to Canada when they actually get into an accident and they're found by a local sheriff, and they end up murdering the sheriff because they're afraid that they might actually be identified as being the people that robbed the casino that from where they were coming from. So they kill the sheriff, and they end up splitting their separate ways because they realize that they can't continue to be on the run together. So they might stand a better chance if they separate and eventually meet up somewhere in Canada. So the location they're at is actually in the wilderness, and it's pretty, it's snow everywhere, and the movie pretty much centers around Olivia Wilde's character. So we follow her, and she ends up being picked up by this guy who's actually on his way to see his parents for Thanksgiving. So he brings her there, meets the family, and they find out that Eric Bana's character is already there, holding up the family. So there's a lot of stuff in between that I'm not really telling you because I want you guys to actually see what happens throughout this entire movie. But the main premise is that they actually come back together at this house, at this family for Thanksgiving, and the whole story basically is just seeing how these characters deal with the fact that they are trying to escape, they're being pursued by officers, there's this family that's in between now that is just trying to stay alive, and just seeing how Olivia Wilde's character throughout the course of the movie is kind of beginning to have feelings for the guy that picked her up, but at the same time she's also trying to be loyal to her brother. There's an interesting kind of like relationship between the siblings as well, so it's kind of like her trying to decide which way she's going to go, loyal to the brother, or kind of to trust her feelings now and protect the guy that picked her up and his family. So overall, I mean, I thought it was a really good film. Lots of action-packed drama, and just seeing Eric Bana play this kind of really, not so much ruthless, but this kind of really psychotic character. I mean, at the beginning you kind of think that maybe he's just a regular bank robber, and that there isn't anything else more sinister going on. But then as you begin to see his character, you begin to see that he's got like another side to himself that he begins to slowly reveal. So, and on the opposite end, you begin to see Olivia Wilde's character, how she plays the guy that picks her up a bit, but then as we go along, she begins to, have feelings for this guy, and especially when they all come back together at the house, that's when things really begin to explode, and and it just goes, it really snowballs after that, But overall, I still thought it was a great film, so I definitely, recommend that, Deadfall for you guys to watch if you haven't seen it. So there's that. The next movie I have to show you comes from Tribeca Films, and it is Hara-Kiri, The Death of a Samurai, which is directed by legendary filmmaker Takeshi Miike. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, Miike. And it's about the samurai who goes to this warlord's castle, and he asks if he can actually perform seppuku on himself. Seppuku, of course, being a ritual suicide, in other words, just killing yourself. And the warlord kind of ends up telling the samurai a story about a previous person that came to his castle asking for the same thing and what happened to him, which was kind of gruesome. But after hearing that story, this samurai says that he still wants to perform the ritual suicide, and in the course of doing that, or before trying to do that, he ends up telling the warlord a story that he has. So he ends up telling him his story, and by the end of it is what is this big, huge kind of twist that you didn't expect to see. But as the movie begins to unfold, you begin to realize that yes, wow, there is this connection between these two stories that are being told. Um, I was completely amazed by how um, amazing, amazed and amazing, But again, I was really impressed by this film. I really loved it, just the whole traditional aspect of samurais, still in feudal Japan, and how these warlords conduct themselves, and how their samurais conduct themselves according to their samurai code, and how if they don't perform a certain way, that they have to be punished according to the rules of samurais. Um, if you're expecting to kind of see like an action-packed samurai film, I would actually recommend to not recommend, but I actually advise that this isn't the type of movie where you're going to see a lot of samurai action. There is some samurai fighting, but not throughout the entire picture. It's not that type of movie. It's more like a drama, just to see how these characters pretty much deal with society in feudal Japan, and especially for samurais, having to live up to their code of samurai, and when things, are becoming desperate, just what these samurais would do in order to try to not only maintain their honor, but still try to provide for themselves and their family members. And again, it's an amazing story that's told through two perspectives. I mean, it is one story that kind of unfolds to tell us the story from another perspective. I hope that makes sense. For those of you that have seen this movie, then you know what I'm talking about. But regardless of that, again, it's a great film. I definitely recommend this one to watch. I don't really get to watch a lot of international films nowadays, but every once in a while, whenever I come across one, I've been pretty lucky to say that I've was really amazed and satisfied by what I ended up seeing, and this one definitely falls into that line of being one of those really satisfying, foreign films. And again, being a samurai film, is probably one of my favorite things as well, as to watch samurai movies. But Hara-Kiri, Death of a Samurai, again, another one that I recommend, which is a really good flick, so you should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. The next movie that I have to show you is not a single but a triple feature. And it's one of these films that, it's not relatively new, because it has come out, and its sequels have come out within the last 10 years or so. And it's the Oceans trilogy. And I actually bought this on a triple pack feature at Best Buy, so I'm actually glad that I actually found this, because I actually enjoy the Oceans movies. So I'm not really going to go into a lot of detail about these films, because I'm sure that most of you have actually seen them. But just to give you a quick, speedy synopsis, basically, all these films are basically about these crooks who pull these heists at different casinos, and it's basically about showing you how they pretty much come together and elaborate on a scheme to rip off banks or casinos, mostly casinos, especially in Las Vegas, and I believe they actually did one at Atlantic City, although I'm not sure if that's actually correct. I think most of them actually took place in Las Vegas. So anyway, so they pull off heists, but they actually show you the entire plan of how they are going to pull off the heist. And basically they bring together all these guys that have specific abilities, and because of their abilities, they are charged with specific tasks that are part of the elaborate scheme of pulling off these robberies. And for the most part, in each of these films, again, the planning and the actual heists themselves are actually a lot of fun to watch. I actually enjoy just seeing how they pull everything off together, to not only rob what they're going after, but also to just trick the people that they're robbing. It's a lot of great stuff in here. It's funny, it's clever. I know that Ocean's 11, it's based on an original, I believe it was either in the 50s or 60s, that there was the original Ocean's 11 film that came out, which pretty much has, I believe, the same premise as these as well, just that these are more up-to-date modern version of the older film. And of course, it's with George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, and a whole host of other characters that are in each of these films, and like I said, I really enjoy these films, so I'm actually glad that I was able to pick up the triple pack of this here. So definitely something that I would recommend you guys to watch for a good time, unless you haven't already done so. So definitely. The next film, of course, is another one that has been out for a while, and it's only now that I'm actually was able to watch it in its entirety. So I mean, I've seen it before, like in bits and pieces when they gave it on cable, but I never actually sat down to watch it from beginning to end. And now that I finally picked it up and I watched it, I'm actually glad that I did because I really enjoyed it. And it's J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, the film that came out. And I have to say that I love the original William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy Star Trek films, and the remake of this one is J.J. Abrams did a fantastic job of kind of giving us an alternate reality to the original Star Trek canon storylines, and just the casting that was done in order to bring in actors that closely resemble the original, Jim Kirk or Spock or Dr. McCoy, Scotty, all these. I mean, they did a great job, picking actors that, not so much that they look, but they actually haven't. They deliver the essence of the original actors that portray the original role. So I really enjoyed it for that fact. And again, the storyline itself is actually really well done, very clever in terms of trying to still hit on some of the more canon parts of the original Star Trek series, but then kind of like revolve it, or within a larger new frame that this one incorporates. It has a lot more to do with time travel, which of course has been explored in the original Star Trek films as well. But in this one, in terms of a time travel plot that kind of focuses on one particular character and their effect on the entire Star Trek universe. So I have to give J.J. Abrams credit for what he did with this film. He did a fantastic job, with the Star Trek remake film. And I'm glad that I saw this, so now I basically know and I'm ready. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next Star Trek film, Into Darkness, which is supposed to come out very soon. So I'm actually looking forward to that one, so I'm glad I saw this one. So definitely, I really enjoyed this one. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you guys to watch J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie. A lot of fun, a lot of fun. The next movie that I have to show you comes from Summit, and it is Sinister. This one is, of course, with Ethan Hawke, and he plays this writer who brings his family. First, before I get into the actual main plot of the film, Ethan Hawke's character, like I said, he plays a writer who actually writes mostly crime novels that are based on, within the movie, actual grisly murders. So he brings his family, they move into this new house, but he doesn't tell them that the house happens to be the site where a grisly murder actually happened. So, he starts, he moves in there with the idea of getting ready to write a new novel, because, since his first novel was his only big major success, and every other novel that he'd written after that wasn't that much of a big deal. So he's trying to kind of find a new story that he can write that can kind of get him back on top. So when he moves into this house and that had these murders, he thinks that this particular case is what's going to kind of propel him back up to stardom the way his first novel did. So he's there at the house, and he discovers this box filled with these old film reels and an old projector in the attic. And he starts watching, and he begins to see the actual grisly murders that happened in that house and in different other places. And in each one, he discovers that there's a deviant presence that appears just briefly in each one of the films. And once he witnesses that, strange things start happening around the house, and he begins to suspect that the house is haunted, things like that, because all these weird things that are happening. And it just really begins to take a really, really kind of like creepy, turn for the worst once that starts happening, I'm pretty much, that's all I really want to say, because, I don't want to give away any of the major points, but I have to say that, if anything, this movie really creeped me out, especially once you get towards the end, even though it's kind of obvious that it's heading in that direction, because everything that you see as you're watching Ethan Hawke's character watch all the movies where all the grisly murders happen, there's always a specific character that's involved in the murders, as he later discovers. So once you begin to see that hint, and then you see what's happening, you begin to understand that, okay, I think it's going to go this way. So regardless of that, again, this movie was really creepy in terms of what happens at the end and things, with that. But, other than that, I still enjoyed it, for that fact. Really enjoyed it for the fact that it had that creepiness in it. Wasn't a lot of, like in-your-face jump scares. They didn't have that. I mean, a couple here and there, but again, it's just the story behind it and just seeing this kind of really creepy atmosphere that all these characters are placed in. And as you begin to slowly, the clues are revealed, it just adds more to the creepiness beginning to daunt on the main characters in the film. So it actually all really kind of like comes together really nicely to just put you kind of on edge, even though you know what's kind of going to happen, but it still kind of keeps you on edge and just creeps you out by the time it actually happens and you reach the end. So definitely I really like this movie a lot, so another one that I would recommend if you haven't seen it, Sinister. The next movie that I have to show you is, I believe, I don't know if it is going to be the last film in this series of film done by this particular actor, or if there are going to be any more. But it is Jean-Claude Van Damme's Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. I only remember seeing the first and second in theaters, and then I think I've seen the third one when they gave it on cable. And I believe it was the fourth one, so I think this is the fifth one in the trilogy. I could be wrong. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I think this is either the fourth one in this in the series or the fifth one, but it's the last one that came out recently. I liked what was happening in this movie, in terms of the action. But I'm still confused as to how did they get from the last films to this one, because Jean-Claude Van Damme now kind of plays this antagonist character that kills Scott Adkins' character's family in the movie. So Scott Adkins wants to get revenge on Van Damme's character for those murders. So he goes on this hunt trying to retrace, the steps and finding clues to the whereabouts of Van Damme's character. And again, all the action that happens around, Scott Adkins trying to find Van Damme characters, it's just pretty cool. There's a lot of action, a lot of good fight scenes, things like that. But I'm still kind of confused as to the storyline in terms of how did we get this far now. If I remember correctly, in the last movie, which I think was Regeneration, I think that was the last one. It's called Universal Soldier Regeneration. Van Damme's character is brought in to take care of a rogue Unisol unit. So he does that, and then he kind of just runs off, right? So when this movie starts out, now we find out that Van Damme is playing a bad guy here, but it's kind of like, okay, so what happened between the last one and this one? How did he become a bad guy now? Like, did his I don't know, his programming get all screwed up again this time around, so that he ends up turning into a bad guy? How did he come to this realization, that all people needed to be, I don't know, I guess set free from being pre-programmed or something like that? So it's weird in that sense. The storyline is really quick, which kind of like really threw me in for a loop, because I didn't understand, okay, how did it get from the last one to this? But like I said, the action sequences were great. The one thing I didn't like was that flickering flashlight thing every time when they ever did, one of those scenes where one of the Unisol guys is injected with, a serum to kind of like release them from their I guess bondage. And as they're kind of like, their memories kind of, I guess, being erased, they end up seeing Van Damme's character, and Van Damme's character is telling them that, you're supposed to be this, you're free, join me and it will set everybody free. But the way they did that, they did it with this weird flickering light, which is kind of a little distracting, to my eyes. So every time I've seen it when I was watching this movie, I kind of had to turn away because it was really annoying, and it was kind of bothering my eyes as I was watching. Because I mean, that was my only setback with that, was just those couple of scenes where they did that flickering light thing, and it just kind of bothered me, bothered my eyes and things like that. And the story, again, it has its ups and downs, but overall, it had a lot of decent action and fight scenes. So, it was fun to watch. I don't recommend it unless you've been following the Universal Soldier movies from the beginning. So and if you like Van Damme movies, well, okay. So definitely I would say check this out. If you haven't done so already. So Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. The next movie that I have to show you comes from Lionsgate, and it's Winter's Bone with Jennifer Lawrence. Here she plays this older sister who's taking care of her two younger siblings and her mother who's ill and pretty much can't function, to be able to support her family. So basically, Jennifer Lawrence takes it upon herself to be kind of like the older sister slash mother now, taking care of her own mother as well as her two younger siblings. And what happens is that the police show up at her house, and they end up saying that her father, I believe, was released from jail but needed to appear in court again, and that if he doesn't appear in court, then they're going to lose the home that they have. So what happens here is that nobody knows basically where the father is, but Jennifer Lawrence's character kind of has these suspicions that she might be able to track him down. So she goes on this pursuit trying to hunt her father down, but can't seem to find him. And at the same time that she's, going left and right trying to figure out the whereabouts of her father, she's of course still concerned about losing her home, because then, where are she, her mother, and her siblings going to live, since they basically don't have much. They basically kind of live out in the woods somewhere in this old cabin that's pretty run down, and it's a pretty run down area as well. So, I really loved this movie a lot. I think I heard about it a while ago, but I really wasn't following Jennifer Lawrence that much until I first saw her in X-Men First Class, and then I saw her in Hunger Games. So I kind of like began to follow Jennifer Lawrence's career a little bit through some of her films, and then I came across this movie that I wanted to give it a shot to see what it was all about, because I heard a lot of good things about it. And I was really surprised and very pleased that this movie was actually really good. The story was unbelievable. I know it's based on a short story or novel of the same name called Winter's Bone. And Jennifer Lawrence did a fantastic job, playing the character of this older sister, having to take care of her siblings, literally be a mother to her siblings while taking care of their actual mother. At the same time trying to look for her father, trying to track his whereabouts to see if he can get him back to court so they don't lose their home, and just seeing all the roadblocks that she confronts as she's trying to figure out the whereabouts of her father. The abuse that she basically takes because she's trying to stand up for herself and her family. So definitely I recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. So I really enjoyed it. I'm enjoying seeing Jennifer Lawrence's career pretty much skyrocket from here. So I'm looking forward to watching the next movie that she's in. So I definitely, like I said, definitely recommend Winter's Bone if you haven't watched it. So yeah. And the last movie that I have here to show you is Disney's Wreck-It Ralph. And again, I love a lot of Disney's CG movies, especially from Pixar. And this is one of the rare few occasions that Disney, the studio itself, actually comes out with a fully CG feature. And I'm really glad that it happened to be, kind of based on video games, since I'm a gamer anyway. So it was really fun seeing a lot of, token video game characters in here. Even though they couldn't put everybody, but it was good seeing, a decent amount of characters from Street Fighter, Sonic, some of them from, Super Mario Brothers, and some other more classical games, as well as even some modern games. But again, it was fantastic. I really loved this. The worlds that were created. And just to give you a quick synopsis of the film, it's about this character named Wreck-It Ralph, who is part of this video game, which is, I believe it's called Fix-It Larry, which is kind of like almost like a parody on the original Super Mario Brothers video game that came out in the arcades years ago. And basically it's about Wreck-It Ralph. He destroys things, and Fix-It Larry has to fix it. And it gets to a point that Wreck-It Ralph kind of doesn't appreciate the fact that he's so mistreated and ignored after the day of arcade gaming is done, right? So you see him going to therapy, where you see all these different kind of like villainous characters trying to express their emotions and trying to find ways to cope with the fact that they're villains, but Wreck-It Ralph does, says that he doesn't want to be a villain anymore, that he wants to be a hero, which is going against, the whole, you know, um, I guess story arc, not so much story arc, but just going up against, the norm of video game characters. There has to be, a hero and a villain, and he happens to be the villain, but he wants to be a hero now. So, and he sets up on this quest, trying to find a way to earn himself, a status of hero. So he goes to all these different video game worlds, trying to find ways to do things, and along the way, Wreck-It Ralph's character, who's actually voiced by, forgot this actor's name. Where is it? John C. Reilly. John C. Reilly voices the character of Wreck-It Ralph. So he happens to go to this Candyland type racing game world, where he meets this character called, oh my goodness, is it even written here? I don't even think it's written here. Yes, it is. Vanellope von Schweetz, who's actually voiced by Sarah Silverman. And basically, I think Sarah Silverman's character of Vanellope von Schweetz is the one character that steals the show, at least for me, in my opinion. Vanellope's character steals the entire show in this movie, because it's this typical cute little girl character that kind of, Wreck-It Ralph stumbles upon here in this world, and in her own way she's trying to help him, I guess, reach his task, what he's trying to do. But at the same time, they begin to get to know each other, and you end up figuring out as the movie goes along that there's actually, another hidden storyline behind Vanellope's character, because in the world that she's in, she's considered a glitch, because as when you see her in the film, she has like this glitch effect that kind of hits her every once in a while, and at the same time that it causes her to be able to perform neat tricks within that game world, it's an unfortunately a hindrance for the video game itself. So these two characters start kind of bonding with each other as they're trying to figure out, what's the deal behind why the world that Vanellope's character comes from is the way it is, right? So, that's basically all I want to say, because I don't want to give anything else, because I could probably start getting into more of the storyline, and I'll probably end up just spoiling it for all of you that haven't seen it yet. But, again, I love this movie a lot. It was a lot of fun to watch, especially because it just dealt with video games, and just seeing that, these characters kind of given a sense of realism that, oh man, I'm a villain, I'm tired of being a villain, I don't want to be that anymore, I want to be a hero, I want to be something different. And how they go about trying to do that was just, it was hysterical just watching it. There's just a lot of little things in here that just made me laugh and chuckle a lot. So I definitely, have to say that, watch Wreck-It Ralph if you haven't seen it yet. You're definitely in for a good time. It was a lot of fun, especially if you know a lot of these video game characters that are used in this film, especially a lot of the older video game characters, like from Q*bert. It's a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend this one for you guys to watch if you haven't seen it. So definitely Wreck-It Ralph from Disney. And that's pretty much it for my newest movie collections update video, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. All right, as always, like my video if you like what I had to show and what I had to say about all the films that I included here. Subscribe to my page so you guys could be up to date and know exactly what's coming out and what I'm coming out with, I guess. Follow me on my Twitter so you basically know also what I could be planning for a future video, and just what's going on with me. And I guess I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, peace. By this guy who's actually on his way to see his parents for Thanksgiving. So he brings her there, he meets the family, and they find out that Eric Bana's character is already there holding up the family. So there's a lot of stuff in between that I'm not really telling you, because I want you guys to actually see what happens throughout this entire movie. But the main premise is that they actually come back together at this house, at this family for Thanksgiving, and the whole story basically is just seeing how these characters deal with the fact that they are trying to escape, they're being pursued by officers, there's this family that's in between now that is just trying to stay alive, and just seeing how Olivia Wilde's character throughout the course of the movie is kind of beginning to have feelings for the guy that picked her up, but at the same time, she's also trying to be loyal to her brother. There's an interesting kind of like relationship between. Hey guys, welcome to my new movie collections update video, my second for this month. As you may recall, my last video was about 2 weeks ago, I believe. Right? So again, I don't have like a huge collection to show you this time around, so another small amount. But I think I'm gonna do it this way just so that I can keep coming up with new videos more frequently. All right. For this particular video, I don't have a lot of really new releases, in terms of movies that just came out. A lot of the films that I have here this time around are movies that have been out for a while, but I just finally got around to actually picking them up and adding them for my own collection. So let's get started, alright? So the first film that I have to show you comes from Magnolia, and it is Deadfall with Eric Bana and Olivia Wilde. Now, Bana and Wilde play the sibling characters who are on the run after pretty much performing a casino heist, and I believe they're on their way to Canada when they actually get into an accident, and they're found by a local sheriff, and they end up murdering the sheriff because they're afraid that they might actually be identified as being the people that robbed the casino from where they were coming from. So they kill the sheriff, and they end up splitting their separate ways because they realize that they can't continue to be on the run together, so they might stand a better chance if they separate and eventually meet up somewhere in Canada. So the location they're at is actually in the wilderness, and it's pretty, it's snow everywhere, and the movie pretty much centers around Olivia Wilde's character. So we follow her, and she ends up being picked up by siblings as well. So it's kind of like her trying to decide which way she's going to go, loyal to the brother, or kind of to trust her feelings now and protect the guy that picked her up and his family. So overall, I mean, I thought it was a really good film. Lots of action-packed drama, and just seeing Eric Bana play this kind of really, not so much ruthless, but this kind of really psychotic character. I mean, at the beginning, you kind of think that maybe he's just, a regular, bank robber, and that there isn't anything else more sinister going on. But then as you begin to see his character, you begin to see that he's got like another side to himself that he begins to slowly reveal. So, and on the opposite end, you begin to see Olivia Wilde's character, how she plays the guy that picks her up a bit, but then as we go along, she begins to, have feelings for this guy, and especially when they all come back together at the house, that's when things really begin to explode, and and it just goes, it really snowballs after that, But overall, I still thought it was a great film, so I definitely, recommend that, Deadfall for you guys to watch if you haven't seen it. So there's that. The next movie I have to show you comes from Tribeca Films, and it is Hara-Kiri, The Death of a Samurai, which is directed by legendary filmmaker Takeshi Miike. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, Miike. And it's about the samurai who goes to this warlord's castle, and he asks if he can actually perform seppuku on himself. Seppuku, of course, being a ritual suicide, in other words, just killing yourself.